Zichen, we know that CK Hutchison has been managing the port, not controlling the canal. CK Hutchison, formerly known as Chenkong Holdings, since 1997, was operating those ports, Cristobal and Balboa. These are the two Panama ports in question. Now, my question to you is that, the fact that CK Hutchison wants to sell all of its ports except its China and Hong Kong ports. What is that telling you?
Well, that actually tells me that, part of the U.S. concerns, apart from the, unsubstantiated claims made by the U.S. president, there is a larger sense of urgency, of fear of the, so-called Chinese operating port interests in Latin America and even across the globe. And their concern was based on the theory that, even the Hong Kong firm could be under Chinese influence. But the very fact that, CK Hutchison apparently decided to sell those ports without consultation with Beijing showed that they were totally operating on their own commercial interests. And, only after they made the decision and the decision was announced in public, Beijing was apparently caught afoot and, flat-footed and then intervened. So my understanding, my analysis of the sequence showed that, Li Ka-shing and his CK Hutchison was making a business decision in response to huge geopolitical pressure from the United States when it made the decision. So I think that actually proved that the U.S. concerns, whether from the U.S. strategic communities, including think tanks, and the U.S. politicians, they were not grounded in facts.
But China is not helping itself with the fact that through People's Daily and various other media reports that it's criticizing the deal, calling CK Hutchison a sellout of national interests. This is despite the fact that the transaction excludes the mainland and Hong Kong ports. The fact that with this criticism, is it at all not a little bit surprising to you that it has nothing to do with national security because China does not control the ports, but by them saying this, does it make people think otherwise?
Well, again, I think it's better being seen as some sort of self-defense because it was the U.S. which imposed the economic coercion in the first place. And also in this very intense China-U.S. competition, as I described a bit earlier, and if you really went back to the initial press commentaries in Hong Kong, in, for example, 大公报, 大公报, there was like theories floated by Chinese commentators, which were basically saying, if all those 41 ports fell into U.S.-led consortium, would the U.S. be able to, exert further pressure on other countries to damage Chinese shipping interests? So what I see is a Chinese response. And based on the latest press reports, I think it's a measured response. If you read the Financial Times exclusive, for example, yesterday, the Financial Times was reporting that Costco was like one option for the proposed deal is that Costco would take a stake in the sold ports, but not in those two particular ports at both ends of Panama Canal. I think if that exclusive report was true, then that means, the Chinese were still reasonable in trying to assure some of the U.S. concerns, despite that they are not grounded in facts.
So now we have this name, China Costco. This is a state-owned enterprise. This is a ports operator. And if it is then, of course, joining the consortium, which includes BlackRock, that's a U.S. company, and MSC, which is Mediterranean Shipping Company, which would represent Europe or the EU. So you got China, the U.S., and EU. Would you say that this would be a better representation to be controlling the Panama ports?
Well, I think in an ideal world, we shouldn't, point to, this is the representative of the United States, China, and Europe. But unfortunately, we are in this reality. But in fact, the operating of these ports, as you described earlier, they are not equivalent to controlling of the canal. I mean, the ships, they can choose to dock at a certain port, and the port operators merely was providing services to them. whether a port receives a commercial ship and or bars that particular ship, that's ultimately the decision of the sovereign nation, which hosted these ports. And I think we can have a more closer example in Sri Lanka in Asia, which is much closer to us. There is another Chinese state-owned company, China Merchants Port, which leads I think 70% of the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka for 99 years. And for quite a few years, that port and Sri Lanka was used by the Western narrative as the poster boy of China's so-called debt trap influence. But when a Chinese research vessel, the Zichen Wang 5, when it wants to merely dock at the port in 2022, Sri Lanka received a huge pushback from India and from the United States, and it delayed the Chinese ships docking at the port. Only after Chinese engagements and interactions was the Chinese research ship was allowed to dock at the port, and it was ordered to close all the related equipments. And soon after that ship visit, Sri Lanka announced a 1-year ban on all foreign research ships, so effectively shutting down all Chinese research ships visits in the following year. So that was a Chinese majority SOE controlled port with a 99-year lease. And it was, used as a poster boy of Chinese influence. Sri Lanka is much closer to China than the United States. Theoretically, it is under, much closer Chinese influence. But even in that situation, the sovereign nation was in the decision to allow or buy a foreign research ship docking. So, my takeaway from that story and for all these discussions is that, whether a commercial operator operating the ports, providing services to its to commercial ships, that is unfortunately has been exaggerated of a nation state, of a sovereign state influence that could threaten the national interests of the United States at its backyard. It's just so overblown, and this is very unfortunate. It creates a lot of turbulence and uncertainties for all these money-making commercial entities that otherwise could just do their business.